Hey everyone, so the Gloomhaven Grand Festival just keeps getting grander, it seems, with the inclusion of a brand new spin-off mini-game called Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs. This is Gloomhaven Travel Edition, if you like, or mini, maybe, to some people, but there are actually some key differences. It's not quite as simple as that. This is quite a unique game, actually, that has a few unique elements just to it, in both the way that it shrinks down the game and also its kind of approach. This was based on the award-winning Gloomhaven, which was kind of a pocket-sized Gloomhaven developed by Joe Kipfel, who is also involved in this project. And it really kind of came out of nowhere when it was created. Joe just kind of got struck with a vision and kind of created this thing for the community on Board Game Geek. Won a Golden Geek Award back in 2021 for the design, which is pretty impressive, really. And obviously that got Cephalofair's attention. Joe has teamed up with Nikki Valens on this project, so Isaac is not actually kind of part of the kind of design team, but is of course part of the kind of writing team and I guess the kind of world building team. But Nikki has done a lot of great work, including Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, not a game that I have played, but is very well liked. So it's very prolific and has a great experience here. So obviously this is a very talented team as well. So I think we can be assured that this is going to be a really well kind of created and curated experience, definitely. And just for $15 as well, it's a very kind of easy thing to add onto your pledge if you're going in for other things. But let's take a closer look at what this actually is, how it plays, what the differences are, and you can work out whether or not it's something you want to add to your pledge. Before we get started, a big thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon and on Twitch, with the Patreon people coming up on screen now. A big thank you to my legendary supporters Mike, Kira, Obi-Wan Kanti, and Shao Quinn. Thank you guys for the support. I really appreciate it. If you would like to help support me and the channel, then you can head over to twitch.tv/ManageRequest and drop a sub over there, or you can go over to patreon.com/ManageRequest and become a Patreon member for some early access to some videos and some behind the scenes stuff. So the big things first up, this is a solo game only, and of course it is a much smaller box. I actually kind of roughly worked it out, and it's about the size of 2 Oink game boxes stuck together, if you can kind of imagine that. There's my 2. I only own 2 Oink games. That was kind of lucky, but yeah, it's basically that kind of size. So you can see like the kind of difference that it's going to be in terms of footprint for you to be able to take around. It's not quite pocket-sized. It isn't quite pocket-sized Gloomhaven. I mean, you'd need a pretty big pocket to fit that in, but certainly something you can easily toss in a bag and you can kind of take with you wherever it is that you go. If, for example, you like to do a little bit of analog gaming solo when you're out and about on your travels. So this is a linear narrative experience that is 20 scenarios long. You will have to play through all 20 to get the full story experience. This does not have divergent paths like you had in Gloomhaven or optional side missions or things like that. It is a strict 20. Each scenario is going to take somewhere in the region of 20 to 30 minutes to complete, so without any downtime as well for any kind of incendiary things that you would have in Gloomhaven or in Frosthaven with all the outposts or city events and things like that. None of that exists, so you can just jump straight into the next scenario. This will give you a general overall time of around about 7 to 9 hours for a complete single playthrough of the story experience. Then of course you've got all of the starting mercenaries to maybe play through again, because of course this is a solo experience played with 1 mercenary, so it's unclear as to whether or not you would want to change mercenaries maybe midway through your playthrough, or actually it would be better to just play it through with 1 single character and then maybe for repeat plays play with the other starting mercenaries, so you could still get yourself a very big chunk of time here for what is a very small investment of only $15 for this game. The artwork and the story here do seem to be a little bit more cutesy, a little bit more fuzzy than potentially the mainline Gloomhaven games. I think this is kind of just a little bit of the symptom of the shrinking that is going on here in this game. The idea here that the mercenaries have shrunk. I'm very much getting a kind of Mice and Mystics or Stuffed Fables kind of like feeling and vibe from this particular game. So if you played either of those games, it looks like it will be a relatively family friendly and sort of child friendly kind of experience. No gore or kind of difficult kind of themes or anything like that will be kind of included in this game, but of course it is a solo experience though. So although while not necessarily designed for children, it's definitely going for more of the cutesy, and it's really playing into that kind of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of type of aesthetic. all the scenarios are played out on double-sided cards. So on one side, you will have the scenario layout showing you where your obstacles are, your monsters, and where all the spawn points and things that you need to do for the scenario. It'll all be condensed onto one side of the card, and then the other side of the card will be the narrative for that particular scenario and the kind of rewards and things that you get when you kind of complete. So you can get items that way as well, and it'll tell you what to move on to next as you go through this campaign. So the brief details that we know is this is set after Gloomhaven and after Forgotten Circles. It is around the kind of time when all of the kind of city of Gloomhaven is abuzz with people, tales of the adventurers, and Hale, who is a very prominent character in the Gloomhaven game, has become a little bit of a local celebrity, and she's getting a bit fed up with all of these mercenaries and bandits and enemies and things like that knocking on her door, trying to kind of, you know, get her to, kind of help them on their travels or adventures. She's become a little bit of a local celebrity in the Gloomhaven area. And you start off as a adventurer who wants to kind of follow in the footsteps of the famous Gloomhaven adventurers and mercenaries. So you have the starting classes. They are all included here, the standard starting classes from Gloomhaven, but you are very much a new character in that sense. And you go to, the first step of the game is that you go to Hale's door because you're looking to, you know, kind of enlist Hale for help on your adventures or for some sort of noble quest for her to send you on, something like that. And essentially she has cursed her door so that anybody who knocks upon her door will immediately get shrunk and down to size. And that's kind of like where the game starts. And then from that point onwards, it will kind of go on its own narrative experience. But that's kind of like where it sits, if you like, in a kind of bite-sized form of where it kind of sits in the Gloomhaven world. The story is not going to be some really deep story here. They've only got a very limited amount of space to work with on these cards, and they are very much focusing, as per Isaac commented on the live stream, that they are focusing again more on the kind of Gloomhaven gameplay, that feel of the gameplay over necessarily the story. So this isn't going to kind of bowl you over with some incredible story, but of course that core gameplay that Gloomhaven has is here, and it's in bite-sized form, so a lot of people are going to really find that very appealing. So although there are some mechanical differences that we'll go through, I think if you've played Gloomhaven before, you will likely be able to jump straight into this because the rules are basically like a kind of condensed version, and there are a lot of similarities of, oh, this now works like this, or this now works like this, and it feels very intuitive. Just watching a little bit of the gameplay myself, I could kind of immediately pick up, okay, this is what we would do, this is how this is going to work. Very, very intuitive looking game, so certainly it's not going to be something that if you are a Gloomhaven veteran, you're going to have to learn a bunch of rules for. And actually could be quite a nice entry point into the series for those people who just want to kind of learn maybe a little bit more about the card mechanics and about the different characters and how that works. Because that remains, although there are some changes, it remains mostly unchanged in terms of the player top, player bottom ability kind of system. So the first big change really is with your characters. So instead of having a huge suite of cards to pick from your level 1 cards and your X level cards, and all of the characters having different hand sizes and those with their kind of like traits that they might have, in this game, each of the characters has 4 cards that you start with, but they are double-sided. You have an A side and you have a B side. All of the cards start in your hand on their A side, and then once you play them for their A side, they will then flip over to their B side and go back into your hand. Then once you play the card for its B side, that is when it will actually go to your discard pile to force you to have to rest. So if you think about it this way, you kind of actually have 8 cards rather than 4. You have 8 kind of abilities. You have 4 cards, but with all of them being double-sided, you kind of have like 8 different kind of selections to choose from there. Of course, you can always choose to use a B ability alongside an A ability if you want, but of course that A ability would flip over to the B side and the B would go to the discard pile. So there could be some inefficiencies there. You have to be a little bit careful, and certainly they estimate that the actual kind of length of each scenario will be somewhere between 4 to 8 rounds kind of on average, but then potentially as long as 9 for the occasional one. So like 9 is really like your maximum stamina. That's not going anywhere. You're not getting more than 9. Most of the scenario is going to fit somewhere in the 4 to 8 kind of like turns, which is going to probably give this much more of a puzzly feel to it where you're kind of going, okay, I can work out exactly the right kind of order to play things. But of course, there's still going to be some enemies in there to maybe throw a bit of a spanner in the works. The other thing with characters is that you do level up and you do gain items as you go along, but the items are actually part of the scenario cards. They're on the reverse of the scenario cards, and then you kind of gather them as you go along. And these items are not like the typical items that we've come to know, although some of the effects seem to be very similar to items that we've seen in Gloomhaven. The actual items themselves are, you know, kind of like characteristically small things like springs or needles or things like that that you might find laying around, that being such a shrunk mercenary, you have much better use of that kind of item, if you like. So that's kind of like the item system. And in terms of leveling up, looks like the leveling up is not done through the actual cards themselves, gaining XP that way. It looks more like the kind of staged progression that is in here. It is a linear experience. You play through all of the scenarios and then you're kind of finished. So it looks like they're giving you potentially level ups after so many scenarios or something, or as potentially as a reward to then get an extra card to add to your pool of cards to then choose what you would like to take on each scenario. Enemies and monsters have shrunk down quite considerably in all of the stuff that they have. So now you use cubes, which are shown on the scenario cards to show the different enemies. And then on each turn, you roll a die, a special die that you use for a few different things in the game that has one of 3 symbols on it, which will actually show what the kind of action set that the enemy is going to do. So they have 3 different actions that they can do, and depending on what the result of the die roll is, that will be the action and the initiative that they will do. And you use these very neat little trays to kind of track the enemy's turns, so what it is that they're actually doing, as well as their health and things like that. It's a very neat and organized little tray there. I really like that. It looks really smart, and it seems like it's a very nice kind of quality of life, quality component really to help you manage the game. If, for example, you are playing it in kind of like on a plane or something like that, or on a train or something where maybe you could be like nudged or something like that, it means that it's unlikely to be nudged. So it's a really nice quality of life feature for accessibility reasons as well, but also just for generally if you want to play this maybe in a very crowded area, or if you wanted to just pick it up and move it maybe at a moment's notice. So on your turn with your abilities, you're probably going to want to attack an enemy, and the attack system has changed slightly as well. Gone are attack modifier decks, as well as obviously the enemy ability card decks. You now have this special die again that you resolve against this kind of little chart that you have, that you kind of progressively scroll down as you do your attacks. So you roll the die, you use the symbol against the corresponding number in the row, and then you move the cube down to the next row to then use the next row, and you kind of go from top to bottom and then loop back around again when you need to. So you kind of still get a little bit of that variance that you would do from an attack modifier system. However, now there's maybe some interesting kind of opportunities to time attacks against certain points, because you know that on this particular attack there's a chance of you missing, or on this particular attack there's a chance of you critting. So perhaps you choose your targets wisely, because now you have a 1 in 3 chance with the roll of that die to be able to get, you know, that either that worst or best outcome, I guess. So it's a very interesting system, I think, and one to keep an eye on, but a really cool way to get away from, you know, the card-based system, but yeah, still keep a little bit of that kind of unpredictable nature of the attack modifier system. So as you complete the scenario goal and finish the scenario, hopefully successfully, you'll then flip over that scenario card and it will give you the resolution and potentially some rewards. And you will then move on to follow the instructions and move on to the next scenario card. And away you go. A very kind of neat, quick experience. You'll probably be able to play multiple scenarios in a go. Shouldn't be very difficult to get through, you know, this kind of game very, very quickly, I would think. But again, it's a very modest kind of project. It's $15 is the price if you'd like to add it onto your pledge. You can actually now, on the Backerkit right now, just do a pledge for just this, which is interesting because quite a lot of people have actually gone for that. So a lot of people have gone for a pledge for just this game. If you go down to the shipping tab though on the Backerkit, it is looking as like $7 US. $10 for the UK here where I am, if you just wanted Button and Bugs, which does seem a little bit pricey for me if you consider that the game itself is only $15. You know, that does suddenly turn it more into kind of like, a $25 thing, and then obviously you might have taxes on top of that, and this is all estimates and things like that. I think what will be very interesting to hear from Cephalofair, I doubt we would hear it from them right now, is whether or not this will be coming to retail. Maybe I've missed that announcement, maybe I haven't seen it, so apologies if I haven't, but it'd be very interesting if it is coming to retail, because if it is, and it can stay around the similar kind of price point, this may be one that you might actually want to wait for retail, because it will be something very easy to pick up, I would imagine, for a very low shipped cost as well, once it kind of gets into circulation, or perhaps if you go see Cephalofair at a trade show and perhaps they're selling it there. So something to consider there. If you just want this, I feel like possibly there may be some better avenues for you. Of course, if you just want to support the Backerkit campaign and Cephalofair and support this great project, then all the power to you. It's always a good way to do that and just support the publisher and the designers a little bit more directly anyway. But yeah, I will be definitely adding this to my pledge as I kind of go forward. It's an absolute no-brainer to me, and I'm actually really looking forward to it. What's really surprising to me is this is actually the most exciting thing that they have released, really, apart from obviously second edition. I mean, second edition kind of gets a pass. But apart from second edition, this is the most exciting thing for me now with this campaign, because it's just neat. It's just a new thing. It's a new little kind of campaign to play through. Sure, the mercenaries are the same mercenaries that we've been playing, but the abilities will be probably changed a little bit, or they look like they've been changed slightly to kind of, better fit that kind of environment. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to like a little kind of box of Gloomhaven fun to just play for a few hours on stream. I'll probably end up streaming it because it'll be a lot of fun to do that as well. So let me know down in the comments, guys. What do you think? Is this something you're going to be going for? Is this something that you saw coming, expected? Let me know. It is another thing to add to this already monstrous Backerkit campaign, though, so it's interesting to see that this campaign just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, it's really got me thinking what might be coming up in the next few days. I mean, I don't know. There might be something that may not be. This might be it, but it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen in the next couple of days. So definitely a campaign to keep your eye on right up until the close. So as a reminder as well, for people who don't know, I was going to potentially do a video on what I'm backing, just to give some people some guidance on like how to use Backerkit. But if you are in on the Pledge Manager, just playing the dollar amount to get into the Pledge Manager, then you are in. You are in the club. That means that when the campaign closes, you will have the opportunity to add on anything that you want. And if at the end of the day you decide that you don't want anything at all, you've lost $1, and that's all that you've basically invested in it. So again, a pretty good option for people at this stage if you are just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, but are worried that perhaps if you don't do something, you might miss out on it entirely. So that's an option for folks. Well, I think that's pretty much everything for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will catch you all in the next video. Bye.
I think still, yeah.
That's the blessing from Cowboy. That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?